Good morning. Mobility and transportation next. Dubai's transport transformation is accelerating. Etihad Rail is edging closer to passenger operations. The Dubai Loop Underground project is drawing global attention. Major metro expansions are reshaping the city's future, and with congestion pressures rising alongside population growth, the UAE is betting big on infrastructure to keep the economy moving. Transport expert Martin Tillman's back with us on the Morning Drive here at Mirror Business FM with hopefully the latest roundup of transport developments, what they mean for the likes of us commuters and business and growth. Good to see you, Martin.
Hi there. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. So the real action is happening on, and I suppose under the ground as well at the moment, or will be. The UAE is betting big, as I said, on infrastructure to stay ahead of the population. So much happening. Is it an exaggeration to say to you that we're now seeing Dubai entering a new phase where transport infrastructure is central to economic growth?
I think we are seeing a major transformation in how transport is moving forward now in the UAE as a whole, I think. So first of all, in the past, I would have said that transport it was quite reactive. So if I was thinking about the Red Line, for example, it was there to sort of serve the airport. It was there to serve the main corridor, the Sheikh Zayed Road. And it was put in afterwards. You know, the developments had come up, the growth was there. There was a need for additional transport to come into play.
Yeah.
We're now in a phase where Dubai is a much more mature city than, say, 2009 when the metro line originally came in. And we've got significant population growth since that time. And we've got huge projected high population growth as well. And to do that, it's not business as usual. It's not just we keep building roads to do that. There's a finite limit to what you can do in terms of roads. And that's why public transport has been seen as not just one that's reactive, but now perhaps we're looking more proactively. We're thinking ahead, we're planning, and it's not just about serving existing developments, but it's also about unlocking opportunities for new development.
So it's less about easing congestion, more about looking ahead, isn't it? So let's look at some of the developments recently, because I suppose Etihad Rail is kind of the big one, really, that we're all kind of looking at. Most of us have seen the freight trains. We've seen how some of those have been diverted. That's probably the wrong phrase when it comes to railways, but for supply chain assistance in the last couple of months, for example. But we're getting closer to passenger operations. How does connecting Dubai and Abu Dhabi and the Northern Emirates and ultimately further around the region fundamentally change, I suppose, here, the commuter map for businesses?
Well, Etihad Rail is an intercity service.
Yeah.
So its market is orientated towards the movement between cities and here between Emirates. So the key markets will be between Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and dare I say, Dubai, Sharjah. And I guess some of that is going to be down to what you're talking about, the commuter service. I can imagine there will be a huge potential demand for that Sharjah-Dubai movement, for example, based on traffic flows that are currently seen. The question then becomes, how much are they being charged for the tickets? How often are the services? And what is the integration of those stations with the area around it? So, for example, the Dubai Etihad Rail Station, the Sharjah Etihad Rail Station. How do people get to and from it? That's your front door essentially for your city.
Yeah.
So it's a slightly different market. I would say it's, commuters is part of it, but I would say it's more about potentially tourism linking up to Fujairah as well. I just feel like it's got multi-purposes rather than just, when you think a metro, perhaps maybe more is about the daily commuter movement.
I just have this romantic notion in my head, I think, about maybe being able to use it and get my season ticket. I don't know why I look at it that way, but I do. But it's remarkable, isn't it, that we've seen this come seemingly so quickly, and from that we're going to start seeing an impact on where people choose to live, where people choose to work. As well, I think it's going to have that. There's going to be a real cultural impact.
I think the key here is it's very interesting because coming from the UK there, and especially I came from London. The focus on the integration between transportation, public transportation, and development, and the actual need, whether you need to have a car or whether it's actually perhaps inconvenient almost to have a car because transport is so readily available and parking and traffic is so difficult, so that it sort of changes the balance. And I think it's inevitable. I feel that transition is happening across the UAE as well, that we're going to start seeing that move, that public transport with all the modes that we've talked about will start to really transform the way people think about transport here. And I think one of the keys you mentioned there about where people live is very interesting. Yeah. People can start to think about, and I think it's already happening, to be honest. People are already thinking, how far away am I from a metro station? Is it within 10, 15-minute walk? Is it an easy walk? Yeah. Is it a smooth and shaded walk, for example, that can get me to and from my destination so that perhaps I do not need to buy a car? And I think those thought patterns are going on, and the evidence from developers is that any properties within, say, 10, 15-minute walk of a railway station could have a potential uplift in value, say. I've heard ranges between 10, 20, even 30% uplift in value just by being close. So there's a developer incentive to do it as well.
You're right, it has happened. I did some work at Expo all those years ago now, and I would kind of park and ride. So I'd park at DIP and then get the couple of stops to Expo. And one thing I did notice was I would sort of nod at people who were doing the same thing, and you kind of got to know people. So it's been happening for a while. Amazingly, it's 5 years since Expo. I know. So Etihad Rail is going to connect the cities. Within Dubai, the Dubai Loop Underground project has lots of people talking, of course. It's generated huge, probably global headlines, to be fair. As I understand it, it's 93 kilometers. It's a climate-controlled cycle and running highway. That's what I've read. Is it a lifestyle luxury or is it a mechanical necessity to ease the roads? What do you think?
So this was a concept, as far as I have read. I've read the same
That's all I
articles
know
and stories.
about it.
It's a concept. I think the key idea, the fundamentals of it are strong, which is to create essentially a cycle superhighway, a freeway for cycles that is segregated, that doesn't have the safety issues of being alongside or mixed with vehicular traffic. Yeah. So if I think about whether I would feel comfortable cycling to my work or my kids to school, I'm thinking primarily safety. I'm thinking, is it an uninterrupted, is it separated from traffic flow, before I think about any other reasons why I may or may not choose to let them do it or for me to do it. And I think that was the overriding thought behind that concept, to separate the cyclists away from the general traffic and to give them the freedom to move around without hindrance. And I think there are examples of similar, not quite the same elevation, but again in the UK, and I was in Holland a year or two ago, the same kind of principles apply of these cycle superhighways, but they're at ground level. They are at street level, but they are separated. They're kept away from the main traffic flow. And the last time I was in London, and I hadn't been for a few years, I was quite surprised to see how many people were cycling. And of course, in Holland, I was I was so impressed by the range of people that were actually cycling to and from.
Do not get in the way of a cyclist in Holland, in the
There
Netherlands.
is that.
Do not stray onto
And
the
you know what?
cycle
That's
path.
interesting, right? Because then suddenly it's like not cars, but people are worried about cyclists, and they even have traffic lights for cyclists as well now.
Yeah, it's a remarkable system. And if you do stray on, expect a punch from a passing cyclist. That much I do know to be true. Not that it's happened, of course. So, I mean, the loop potentially could be. There are a number of benefits to that. Obviously, there's the safety aspect. There is the health aspect that that you're walking in a climate-controlled or cycling in a climate-controlled environment, or you get some of the scooters off the roads, or the kids on the electric scrambler bikes that are everywhere at the moment. So it could be a real transport breakthrough.
I think so, and you've touched on a few more points there, which is safety for me is the priority.
It's clearly,
but the second point, people often think, oh, it's the heat that stops people from cycling. It's not actually. That's probably not the top reason, or even the top three. It's more about, do people have access to facilities at their destination, at their origin? So, for example, do you have a place to store your bike? Do you have a place to get changed when you're there? Are there shower facilities? Just basic things and maybe some places where they might have cycle repair places. Maybe the bike needs a bit of maintenance while you're there. Mm-hmm. And then the other one, which sometimes surprises people, is in countries where cycling has not been so common, it's actually not so prevalent for people to know how to ride a bicycle. And so there is a learning path. So when we've done interviews of people about what would encourage them to be cyclists, I was quite surprised to find that some of them, of course, didn't know how to ride a bicycle. And so there was an educational part to it as well.
I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing you grew up in a similar way to me, and it was learning to ride a bike is like a rites of passage thing when you're, 5, 6 or whatever. Yes. And all of a sudden the world opens up because freedom, off you go. Don't go back till it's dark, kind of thing. That's an interesting point. The other thing that I wanted to bring up with you today, in terms of infrastructure that we're starting to see, obviously the Blue Line under construction, the Gold Line now unveiled, and the word that applies to these projects, I suppose, is mainly transformative.
Transformative, not just reactive, proactive, opening. For me, the key is opening up new areas.
Yeah.
And if I think about when I first came here 20 years ago, it was very much when we were planning metro systems, it was about just how can we plug it in to existing areas. And if I'm honest, a little bit of tension about, well, what is it going to do to the developments that were perhaps just going through that development process, and the interruption or the disruption of putting a metro station quite close by and how that was going to affect it. We've come a long way in the last 20 years. Now we're about how do we integrate the metro systems within developments so that it is an integral part of a development. And we would call this transit-oriented development, TOD.
Okay.
And this is where it's actually a fundamental part of the development. By this, I'm not just talking about metro, by the way. This would also include first and last mile, like you mentioned, the scooters, the bikes, but also buses. We haven't talked about buses yet, and there's huge plans for buses as well. And making sure that it is a fully integrated hub based on that higher density that you'd expect in those kind of developments, so that if you live in a community, a TOD community, you have your rail, you have the buses, you have your first, last mile, but you also have retail, you have your residential, you have your healthcare, you have your schools. And it starts to become its own little sort of environment, orbit, if you like, that people can come and go to quite easily.
Tell me about buses then, because I'll be honest with you, I'm guilty of not really thinking about buses as much as I should. I'm from London, like you, so I'm very aware of how necessary buses are, but I drive everywhere. Unfortunately, I
It's
should
just not
practice what.
seen as glamorous as some of the other modes, right?
No, it's not. But I know that, I mean, the bus system here is fantastic. You can get anywhere if you know how to do it, like any bus system. But what are the plans? What's the future?
So the key ones are, first of all, the transformation from diesel to electric. So there are already orders in for electric buses. I believe some of them are already running on the roads at the moment. Obviously, expansion of the fleet, more buses coming. RTA is already purchasing more buses to come into Dubai. They also recently announced, I think in the last couple of days, an expansion to their bus on-demand service, which is essentially, if you know, of course, you know, the Ubers and the Careems, it's a bit like that, but on a bus focus, so that you essentially say, I want to use, I'd like a bus to come and pick me up, please, from this location, and then I want to go here. The idea is it's a bus, a small one, but it would come and pick you up, but it might have passengers already on it. And they may be going in a similar, hope they're going in a similar direction to where you're going. And that route will then sort of work itself out through AI and sort of algorithms that will work out the most efficient route based on the people and where they're going to. And that's, the RTA has one, which is expanding, which suggests that it's doing very well. But what also interesting is there are private services also operating in Dubai doing the same thing. So there's a real, I mean, for me, the most important to have a layered transportation system. We shouldn't just be thinking rail. It's got to be rail, but it's got to have the full layered approach underneath: the buses, the walking, the cycling, the micromobility, shared mobility, taxis, etc. The whole system, and Dubai is getting there for sure, is when it's all together, that's when it really hums.
We've discussed how the metro drives property buzz, the potential return on investment. But as a transport expert, Martin, where do you see the highest return on infrastructure for businesses? Is it the big rail projects, or in the kind of smart city transport systems, the digital systems?
And do you mean, by that question, do you mean how they benefit from those systems coming in, or more about how they can earn money through putting it into play?
I was thinking benefit, but I suppose anybody listening is thinking, I could earn money from this, so let's do both.
So I think from a business point of view, clearly time is money. And if people are delayed coming into their work or for meetings or getting to businesses or getting to events, that costs money. So the more efficient, the more flexible a system is to carry those people is very important. Secondly is the movement of goods. And again, we perhaps tend to compartmentalize between passengers and freight, and we tend to think of freight as trucks only.
Yeah.
But there is an overlap in that sometimes we can look at how public transport can be used for the movement of goods, small goods, parcels as well. There are examples where maybe the vehicles are repurposed outside of peak hours and actually used for the movement of goods as well. So there are nice innovative ideas that are coming up. And in terms of businesses earning money, I think the potential is huge. I think as new developments are coming in, new rail systems, new bus systems, as I mentioned, private companies are now coming in to operate demand responsive transit, the bus on demand services. Other companies are operating the rail services. I think we're going to see more and more of that opening up to the private sector to operate public transit services, with RTA taking on that sort of operator, regulator type role, looking after everything.
What about autonomous vehicles? Because the goal, I think it's the 2030 goal, is 25% of all trips are to be autonomous. Where are we on that timeline? Because 2030 was around the corner.
It is, and they're actually not that far away because they include metro under that autonomous version. So, of course, the metro is fully autonomous. There's no drivers, as you know, in the metro services. There was an announcement about a month or so ago about the Boring Company, Elon Musk's company, where They've now, RTA has signed a deal with one of the big engineering firms to introduce, to start studying the implementation of this tunnel. It's a trial version. I think it's around 6.5 kilometers long, linking up areas around DIFC, Dubai Mall, this area.
Yeah.
And it's essentially a tunnel with Teslas running through point to point. And of course, they're autonomous. And the question I'm usually asked about that is, will it move the needle? And the honest answer to it is, what we are seeing is an implementation of more modes, more layers to the transportation network. Does it move as many people as a rail system? No, it doesn't. But that's not the intention here. The intention is about linking,
interconnectedness, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I like to ask this question because people always think about, I just want to get there as quickly as possible. And I think if we were honest with ourselves, we want reliability. We want to know, if I leave my house at this time, I know I will get there in half an hour.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to know that it's seamless. I want to know that it's a smooth journey. And I want to know I'm going to get there at that time. If I'm traveling at 50 kilometers an hour or 80 kilometers an hour, doesn't really make that much difference as long as I know that's the time I'm going to arrive.
If there's traffic and you're moving, it's a whole lot better, even if it's slow, than when you're in traffic.
Yeah, and any disruption to your journey will cause anxiety and stress.
If you can see it move, it does make I'm with you. There's a lot of tech involved in this. We're going to see AI-powered bus stations. Transport systems are getting smarter. And if you're really going to transform, the tech's super important, isn't it?
It is. I think the key one is the human interface. So it's great. I mean, a lot of it should be hidden. A lot of it, as users, we shouldn't even know. We don't even need to know.
I shouldn't really ask the question about the tech. It should just be there.
It should just be there, right? We don't need to know how our phones work, essentially. We just want them to do what we want them to do. Yeah. And the same with public transport. The key is the interface. So there's something called Mobility as a Service, MaaS. And this is about how we bring together all the various transportation modes. And by that, I mean not just the rail and the bus, but even walking and cycling and scooters, all into one condensed, merged system that brings everything all together so that when you want to make a journey, it will give you all the options. And if your ticket will be all the way through, there's no need to buy multiple tickets. Your timing will work perfectly. You will know exactly, there will be clear direction from one point to another point on any transfers. The idea is that it removes friction. Yeah. For any journey, friction is what causes the problems. If we can remove that friction, then it becomes so much easier for people to use alternative forms of transport.
I wasn't aware that you transport bros had so many acronyms. So we've got TOD, MAS.
I've got a lot more than
I bet you have. I've learned something this morning. There's one question I have to ask, and you must hear this all the time, and I guess we'll end here. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but it's the $1 million question, I think. Can we realistically, how do we do it? How do we convince people to leave their cars behind?
I don't think it's a question of, we shouldn't be demanding people do it, right? This is not I don't think this is a push. I think this is more about a pull. We're trying to pull people towards that sort of the opportunities and the options being there. Right. So for me, it's the choice. Provide the choice. It's almost like build it and they will come. If we have the opportunities there, if it's clear, if it's frictionless, if it's smooth, if it's reliable, these are the key messages that we need to make sure that people hear. And once people have tried it and understand that it's more reliable than perhaps, like you said, getting caught in traffic, then we'll start to see the changes happening. There are push factors as well. Tolling, for example, road tolling. parking charges. So all of these have potentials to make it more sort of make it. It's more of a tool to help to try and balance that. To say, let's weigh the scales a little bit more towards sustainable transportation.
It's finding the balance, isn't it, I guess?
Exactly.
Martin Tillman is a Middle East-based transport planning and mobility strategy consultant. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming in. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share it, leave a comment, follow, and subscribe for more as well. This is Mirror Business FM.